budget Jenga. Okay, because I'm cheap, all right? Have you ever played Jenga? You ever played Jenga? It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool game. See, you got this, you know what's going to happen, right? You got this stack, this tower of blocks that you want to be very careful with. All right, there they are. I've got them out here. So you got crisscrossing. Each level has 3 blocks, and they're crisscrossed. And the object of the game is to remove a block using one hand without touching anything other than that one block. Remove that block and then stack it on top. And then you get to keep doing that, and it's a party game, so everybody gets to take turns. I'm not going to have you come up here because I'm going to knock it down myself. But you go through and you take turns removing blocks and stacking them until you build your tower as high as you can, and it gets wild and all of that. This game reminds me a lot of the way we live our lives. Because we like to be in control. We like to be able to call the shots and tell how everything's going to be, how each piece is going to fit into our life. That's what we like to do. And so we want control of the radio station in the car, don't we? And we want to control the volume, and so we make that selection. And we want to control the temperature wherever we are. And if it's too hot or too cold, then we want to control it. I don't care what everybody else thinks. I want to be comfortable, right? And so we're going to control that. What else are we going to do here? We're going to control our schedule, everything, what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. I want control. My bank account, what I'm going to do with my money, that's under my control. My health, my body, and my choice, right? I get to control. I get to decide what happens there. Oh yeah, I'm under control. I got the control. My spouse's schedule. That honeydew list ain't getting no shorter, right? My spouse, who they talk to, where they go, what they do, what their opinions are, how they dress. Some of us guys need our wives to be in control of how we dress. Who my children date. Who they marry. Guess who's going to control that, mom? Or daddy. Guys, we got our shotgun, right? I know a deep swamp. Nobody will find you, son. I'm in control. Hey, I'm in control of the weather. Because we want to save the planet. So, oh my, y'all. I'm in control. I can't believe that actually worked. I'm not going to attempt it anymore. We want control of everything, don't we? Don't we? And really, guys, we're control freaks. A couple of weeks ago, we started a sermon series called Smashing Idols. And one of the most common idols in our world today is the idol of control. It's got to be my way or the highway. Do you struggle with worshiping the idol of control? Tiffany Matthew describes it this way. She says, have you ever failed a test and plummeted into depression because it threatens to unravel your academic aspirations? Have you ever become angry or fearful when things don't go as you planned? As a parent, have you been consumed by fear when something threatens the future of your children? As a wife, do you struggle letting your husband lead? As a believer, is there tension because you refuse to submit to the authority of your parents or church leaders? If you say yes to these questions, you have an idol of control. Many times this idol disguises itself as just being organized or on top of things. But if lack of organization and consistency disrupts your God-given joy or makes you question God's sovereignty, then you struggle with the idol of control. Any of us feel our toes get stepped on? I know some of us here are more laid back than others, but the reality is we all struggle at times with this idol. Tim Keeler suggests that we can evaluate our own heart in this matter by completing this sentence. Life only has meaning, or I only have worth, if I am able to get mastery over my life in the area of fill in the blank. Does your feeling of self-worth and value depend on your ability to control yourself and everything around you and get mastery over this or that? You've got a problem with the idol of control. If the only time you're happy is when things are going according to your plans and desires, in family, at church, at work, with your kids at school, dinner, TV, whatever it is, if you're only happy when you get your way, that's a sure sign that you are worshiping an idol of control. This morning, as we unpack that idol of control, we want to answer three questions. The first one is, why do we try to control everything? The second one is, what is the result of being driven to control everything? And third, how do we overcome the idol of control? And to answer the first two questions, we're going to look at a guy in the Old Testament who worshipped that idol of control. His name is Saul, King Saul, the first king of Israel. He was 30 years old when he became king, and he was a humble young man when God selected him to be king. When they were going to raise him up to be king, they had to go look for him. He was hiding in the baggage. He was humble. But they brought him in and they lifted him up as king. He was physically impressive, head and shoulders taller than anybody else in the nation. He was awesome. And he started out as a good king, and he led them to military victory. But then that idol of control entered into his heart. So why do we try to control everything? If you look at Saul's story, God used the prophet Samuel to call and anoint Saul as king. And when King Saul wanted to know what God would have him do, guess who he talked to? Samuel, the prophet of God. And the prophet of God would say, this is what God says to you, this is what you need to do. And then Saul was to do that because that was the word of the Lord to him. And as we turn to 1 Samuel 13, Saul has, again, he's led the army to victory in a battle over the Ammonites. He's been confirmed as king. Now look at 1 Samuel 13, starting at verse 1. Saul was 30 years old when he began to reign. He reigned 42 years over Israel. Now Saul chose for himself 3,000 men of Israel, of which 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in the hill country of Bethel, while 1,000 were with Jonathan at Gibeah of Benjamin. Jonathan was his son. But he sent away the rest of the people, each to his tent. So the rest of that massive army, he sent them home, and he kept the seed, or the heart of a standing army for the nation. Now Jonathan, his son, smote the garrison of the Philistines. Smote, you know what smote means, guys? He attacked them, right? Okay. You don't want me to smite you, do you, buddy? Okay. All right. He smote the garrison of the Philistines that was at Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. Then Saul blew the trumpet throughout the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. All Israel heard the news that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines, and also that Israel had become odious to the Philistines. The people were then summoned to Saul at Gilgal. So he's made king. He gathers the heart of a standing army. He's got 2,000 soldiers with him. His son is somewhere else. He's got 1,000 soldiers. And for years, there's been war between the Philistines and the Israelites for years. But now there seems to be a ceasefire going on. And his son decides to take his 1,000 men and go smite the garrison of the Philistines. So they attack the Philistines, and it's like kicking a hornet's nest. Saul hears what his son has done. He knows the Philistines are going to assemble for a counterattack, so he sends runners all over the country, blowing the trumpet. Hey, everybody here, let's go let the Hebrews hear. Hear what? That Saul, the word got out, that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines. Now, who smote the garrison of the Philistines? Was it Saul? It was Jonathan, his son, wasn't it? Now, perhaps Saul gave an order that we're not told about. But I kind of think there was probably a little bit of jealousy going on there, and a little bit of pride going on there. And Saul just took the credit. Because we know he has a problem with that later on when the people, or, when David is coming along and the people are saying, Saul has killed his thousands, but David's killed his tens of thousands. How does Saul react to that? He's going to try to kill David. So he's got a problem with jealousy and pride. So one of the most common reasons we try to control everything is pride. We think we're better than we are. That's why it's got to be my way, according to my schedule. There's the wrong way to do it, and then there's my way to do it. You take your pick of what you want to be. If somebody else does it, it's not going to be to whose standard? Mine. Who gets the credit? Who gets the credit at your house? Who gets the credit at work? Do you always have to have it your way? If you do, you got a pride problem. That's not always easy to admit because you got a pride problem. Proverbs 16:18 says, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before stumbling. Pride is a major reason we start to worship the idol of control. And that's one of King Saul's major issues. He didn't start out that way. Again, he was hiding in the coats. He was humble. But when he got a little bit of power, guess what happened? It started changing him. And it began to be filled with pride. There's another reason that we seek control that's probably even more common than pride. Fear. The outcome may not be what we want it to be. We're so terrified that we might be embarrassed, that someone might think that we were not prepared adequately, or that we're not perfect, or our family's not perfect, or that we might suffer in some way. We're scared of that, and so we take control and do it our way, because we'll do it right, and we don't want to fail. That's what Saul does. He's proud, but he's scared. Jonathan attacks the Philistines. Now the Philistines are going to punch back. Look in 1 Samuel 13, verse 5. Now the Philistines assembled to fight with Israel. 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people like the sand which is on the seashore in abundance. How many soldiers has he got? How many has Saul got? 2,000 and 1,000 with his boy. Okay? When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were hard-pressed, understatement of the year, then the people hid themselves in caves and thickets and cliffs and cellars and in pits. Also some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan into the land of Gad and Gilead. But as for Saul, he was still in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Now he waited 7 days, according to the appointed time set by Samuel. We'll come back to that. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and the people were scattering from him. So Saul said, bring to me the burnt offerings and the peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offerings. That's a critical point in the story. That's the problem. You see, this is the moment when Saul worships the idol of control by doing things his way instead of God's way. If you go back a few chapters to chapter 10, verse 8, the prophet of God, Samuel, gives Saul very clear instructions from the Lord. He says in 1 Samuel 10:8, you shall go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down to you to offer burnt offerings and sacrifice and peace offerings. You shall wait 7 days until I come to you and show you what you should do. So who's going to offer the sacrifice? Samuel, the prophet of God. And when's he going to do it? When he gets there. And when's he coming? After 7 days. That's the command of God, very clear to Saul. Now, Saul is the king. He's not a prophet and he's not a priest. And according to God's law, the only people who could offer those sacrifices, those burnt offerings, those sacrifices, are those who are of the tribe of Levi, because it's the descendants of Levi who could be priests. And you needed to be of the tribe of Levi. Guess what? Saul is not of the tribe of Levi. So guess what he's not supposed to do? Offer sacrifices. God says, wait 7 days to the prophet. Then I'll come and offer the sacrifices and tell you what you should do, what God says. Saul takes control out of fear. This massive army is coming against me. My army is getting smaller, and you're not showing up when I think you should be here. I'm getting scared. The prophet's not showing up. And in a way, for Saul, God's not showing up. Out in the time that he thinks he should. See, that's what fear does to us. We fear the situation is not going to work out the way we want it to. We fear losing control. So we fight for control. We fight to have it our way. We don't forgive people because we fear not having something to hold against them. We've got our agenda, and we don't want to give that up. We don't have time to serve at church because we fear losing some personal comfort or sacrificing our personal plans for the weekend. And I don't want people at church to be depending on me because I like to go off and do what I want to do sometimes. So I'll just hang back. We don't give generously because we fear we won't have the money to pay for things that we want to pay. We don't open our heart to those around us because we're afraid they're going to hurt us. We don't give our life to Jesus because we're afraid we're not good enough. I haven't got my life cleaned up yet right. I'm not perfect. And so I'm going to wait because I'm scared once I give my life to Jesus, I'm going to mess up. Guess what's going to happen when you give your life to Jesus? You're going to mess up. That's why you got to give your life to Jesus. Because he knows you're a very God sinner. Every one of us is. We don't follow the leading of the Holy Spirit because we fear his plans are going to hurt. That's exactly what's going on with Saul. Filled with fear. Knows God says wait 7 days. Knows the prophet is going to come and offer the sacrifice before going into battle. But he is scared. Things aren't happening on his timetable. And so he's going to take charge and make things happen. And it's a cycle that we fall into. When you live in fear that things aren't going to go the way you want them to go, then you take control of everything you can. And then you have all these plates spinning and you live in a constant state of fear and anxiety, then you're going to lose control. Pride feeds control, which feeds pride. Fear feeds control, which feeds fear. Am I going to win the fight? Am I going to pass the test? Is the boss going to fire me? Can I pay this bill? Is that growth cancer? Are they talking about me? Can I afford to retire? And when control is your idol, you're going to constantly be scared of all these things that are coming in the future. And you're constantly going to be trying to cover all your bases and make sure you got it under control. At some point, instead of trusting God and his timing and his plan for your life, you're going to take matters into your own hands because it's a lack of faith. And it'll lead you to disobey God just like Saul did. To tell Jesus, no, I'm not going to do it your way because I'm going to do it my way. So we try to control everything because of pride and fear. Second question. What is the result of being driven to control everything? Look at verse 10. As soon as he finished offering the burnt offering, as soon as he finished, behold, Samuel came. And Saul went out to meet him and to greet him, acting like nothing had happened. But Samuel said, "What have you done?" And Saul said, "Hey, because I saw that the people were scattering from me, and you didn't come within the appointed days, and the Philistines were assembling at Michmash. Therefore, I said, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not asked the favor of the Lord. So I forced myself and offered the burnt offering. I forced myself to sin against God. I forced myself to tell him no and do what I wanted to do anyway." Saul, why did you obey God? What's going on? Losing control. My problems are getting too big for me to handle. God's not showing up in my time, in my way, the way I think he should, so I'm going to take control. And I force myself to disrespect him and disobey him so that I can have him do things my way. But we're driven to control everything. Eventually, we will fail. And when we fail, we blame other people. We play the blame game. Junior doesn't get the grade you think he should have gotten. Whose fault is it? That teacher's fault. You don't get the job. And it's because somebody is racist or sexist or ageist or their nepotism. Somebody comes to you with a problem they see in your life or in your family. There's an issue going on. And they come to you, and you know what you do. You say, it's not our problem, it's your problem. It's your fault. Because you want to be in control. And you got all your plates spinning. And when something starts falling apart, you know whose fault it can't be. It can't be your fault. When our life starts spinning out of control, ultimately, we start blaming God. God, don't you care that I'm struggling here? Why aren't you answering my prayers the way that I think they should be answered? Why aren't you doing what I think you should be doing, when I think you should be doing it? I'm tired of waiting on you. But everything's going to fall apart because of you. We live in a culture where everybody wants to play the victim and not take responsibility for their own mistakes. Everything good that happens in my life is because I did it. Everything bad that happens in my life is because somebody else failed somewhere along the way. And here's the tragedy. We worship control because we want peace. We want joy in our life. We want good things in our life. And we fooled ourselves into thinking that if we control everything, then we can make it happen, just like Saul did. But the truth is, when we are driven to control everything ourselves, we lose the peace and blessings of God in our life. It's like God says, I've got a plan for you. I've got a purpose for you. I've got these things. And we say, no, I'll take care of it myself. And you know what he says? Have at it, big boy. You want to control it? Go for it. One of the things I've noticed about these idols we talk about, we're going to be looking at going forward is the harder you squeeze them, the harder you try to hold on to them and worship them, guess what happens? We saw it with comfort, didn't we? The more you chase after. Jonah, you want to be comfortable? You don't want to go talk to those Ninevites. You want to run the other way and tell God no, because that's outside of your comfort zone. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to be in the belly of the fish. You're going to be as uncomfortable as you can be. You want to hold on to control? You want to control everything so that your life is perfect? Guess what's going to happen? You're going to lose control. You're going to lose control. 1 Samuel 13, verse 13. Samuel said to Saul, you have acted foolishly. You have not kept the commandment of the Lord your God, which he commanded you. For now the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom shall not endure. The Lord has sought out for himself a man after his own heart, a guy named David. And the Lord has appointed him as ruler over his people, because you have not kept what the Lord commanded you. Now, if Saul had listened to God and let God have control and obeyed God, then that army would have come against him. And even if the prophet had not come in time, what do you think God would have done? He would have